right. Well, as you can see, it's going to be a solo cast due to last minute cancellation. I was hanging in there until the bitter end, so sorry it's the pre-roll was so long. But Chris cannot attend, but we'll maybe in JPEG form. Is it still here? In JPEG form, yes. We'll continue on. Oh man, let me move this down a little bit. Where's that weekly logo? There it is. So sorry about that. A little last minute nonsense at work, but we will soldier on. And Chris can continue to give us a reaction. I'm pretty sure it's a lot of Kickstarters this week, so I'm pretty sure that would be most of the reaction. So how's everyone doing? Good to see you. Hey, Matt and Abyss and K5, good to see you guys. Oh, and Alvaro, nice to see you. Thanks for being in the chat. The Blade Runner first episode of the actual play is up on the channel for everybody. Members got an early, like about a week early preview along with patrons. The audio for it is also on the Patreon RSS. If you would like to become a patron, or if you already are, you can listen to just the audio portion of it that way. And yeah, the second episode is almost finished, almost edited. And then I'm going to do all the little graphics for it. But it looks pretty nice. I mean, I'm happy that I didn't just have to throw that work away because I scavenged all that, from the PDF of the core book and the adventure. So it worked pretty well. So how is everyone doing? Yes, no. Oh, there is a Chris. Oh, yeah. There's no. I got to get a dancing Chris, not a static reaction. So it looks like one of those time freeze frames, and the color of the the video has changed a lot, as you can tell. But the microphone still weirdly lines up. That's pretty funny. All right. Yeah. So let's see. So no small talk. No, how's it going with gaming? So we've got tomorrow another second session of John Carter with Matt and Will. So hopefully that gets good. We'll see. And oh yeah. And speaking of D20, I picked this up really cheap, and that's probably a sign that it's not particularly great, but it's really expensive. It's like $80, I think, retail, like suggested retail price. But it was on clearance, and it's a full experience. So here, I'll turn this around a little bit. Sorry if you're just listening. But it contains a ton of handouts, maps, standees, the pre-gen characters. And basically, it's a what-if scenario. So if your house, your fictional house, was awarded Arrakis, kind of what you're taking the part of the Atreides, but it's a different house with different characters, different personalities. Of course, I don't think the Kwisatz Haderach is in your family, but there's a lot of detailed like spice mining, tracking, and a deck of NPC characters and things that you can put on little standees. And a lot of maps representing, different modes and things. But the interesting part about it is they claim on the box that you can just open this box at a table and start reading the first sheet that's on top and go through this process and be able to play the game with nobody reading anything beforehand, nobody doing anything beforehand, because it walks you through the system and the setting and your the adventure well enough. So I really want to test that. It's up to, I think there's 5 pre-gens. So I really want to test and see how that goes. Like literally just open it in a session and go through it as it was intended to be played, and see if they actually pulled this off. Because that's a pretty demanding. I mean, it has to be written. The adventure has to be written really well. And people have to, from the pre-gen, get a pretty good idea of which character they want to play and what this character can do. And I guess if you know a little bit about the setting, that might, help a little bit. But yeah, Alvaro, the what was it? Miniature Market had it really, really cheap. They were clearing it out beginning of this year. And so I got this, and then the Sand and Blood, or the Arrakis kind of source book. Both of those were kind of on clearance, so they must have had a bunch of those, and their retail prices were a little bit high. And this comes with a digital version of the core book as well, so that's one more thing you can award a player with. And it also like makes it a complete experience, because you don't have, there's not a hardcover rule book in there, but you do have the complete rules if you want to use this as a starting point and continue on. You just run bail on Arrakis and try your luck elsewhere. But yeah, it's interesting. The challenge of designing something like that seems pretty daunting. So I'm curious how well it works. So that's something that we definitely should attempt around a real table and record. So we can see how that goes. So I played the quick start. I ran the quick start of Dune when it was on Kickstarter. Or was it Kickstarter or just the pre-order? I can't remember if they Kickstarted this or not. And it's interesting. It's a little complex. I think Chris took a look at the rules. I sent the PDF to Chris, and it was kind of like, no, I don't think so. The way that it was structured and the way that they have, like with a lot of the 2D20, they have you be able to do combat and social interactions with the exact same rules. So it abstracts them a lot. And Dune is even more abstract because there's two levels of play. There's actually playing an individual character on the ground, and then there's kind of playing your house or your role as a higher up and just giving orders to send troops or, delegates or diplomats or whatever. So it has a couple of different layers. So we'll see. Nice. Yes, it does look like Dune Goth Planet. Everyone is invited. It's black and blue. I forget the house name. It's not very compelling. I mean, it's nice artwork, and especially the NPCs have really nice artwork. But yeah, this is like a brooding family. They're not going to do well. Once you steal their MP3 collection, they're doomed. Yeah, so I'm really curious, and if that doesn't happen, I'll eventually just unbox it, just to get a look at the components. But there's cards and tokens and maps and all kinds of stuff in there, so it's really heavy, and I guess that's why the retail price is so high. So it was good thinking of them to include the core book, because I think only that as an experience might be a little limited. Yes, I know. Yeah, Alvaro said, I've yet to see one of those open and play RPG products, deliver. Yeah, I'm very doubtful, but curious on how they tried to execute it. And it's going to be a lot of kind of frantic reading, I think, for the game master, or the, I don't know what it's called. I forget what it's called in Dune. It seems like it's going to be a lot of frantic reading to understand the systems, unless they're going to give you like an example turn of everything, just kind of walk you through, okay, on your first turn, you choose to do this, and you read through it, and you move all the counters and something. Okay, so then we'll decide for the next round. Yeah, right, Abyss, that's very true. They arrive in Arrakis, and everybody immediately collapses from heat stroke because they're all wearing black. Yeah, and I wonder what the pre-gen world, I wonder if it's another water planet, or where it's from. Yes, everyone in Arrakis broods. Yeah, so so I thought I'd bring this, and I'll try to wrangle a group to actually give it a shot. I wonder how it will go. But and it includes a full set of the Arrakis themed dice, also the D20s. So that was shocking too. So there's no D6s in Dune. That's a little bit different. So the damage dice that have been part of that 2D20 system. So you rolled 2D20s and then handfuls of D6s for weapon damage or different effects. Those don't exist. So yeah, a little bit different. And so that may be a thing. All right. Oh, and while I'm at it too, if you've listened this far, go ahead and give this live stream a like. I'm trying to get the likes up, and comment. Feel free to comment underneath the video to also help the engagement. I'm not sure live streams actually do that well. I think uploaded videos seem to do a little bit better. Let's see if I can get the numbers up. Yeah, the only time the only time we had really high numbers on the live stream was when we dissed something going on at Gen Con or so. Oh yeah, it was when we were talking about Gen Con and the BIPOC like little exclusive area. Some hashtag or something must have caught. And so we got a lot of people downvoting and yelling. Oh, hey, there's Chris. Chris made it just remotely. So I definitely need, that would be great to do a text to speech Chris. When you can't make it, that's what we're going to have to do is a, that would be great. Okay, I got to figure out how to do that. So do a text to speech and like you can log into Discord or something and chat while the live stream is going. Chat and that would be so funny. Yeah, so instead of the dancing anime girl, we just have your frozen reaction of horror. But that'd be a funny solution because then you could just I got to figure out what the best way to get your text into like an OBS would be, so that you're onto the PC. So at least you're yelling, you can yell expletives in text form. Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, we should get a. You should head up that the avatar or the profile art that you have. You should head up that artist for a like a separated PSD or however they built that image, and we can construct a VTuber avatar from there. That would be great. Yes. Yeah, that I just worried. I like looked at the the pre-made thumbnail that YouTube makes of the live stream, and me talking and some anime girl dancing next to me makes me look like something really, really horrible happened to me while I was in Japan, and like this is my life now. I talked to an animated GIF. I married an animated GIF, and I'm living in total delusion. All right. Well, let's get started for this week. We got to have a cute Chris when not able to attend when work interferes. Well, thanks for jumping in the chat, Chris, and we'll get started. We'll get started for this week. I even thought I got the lights a little bit better. I've crossed the lights. I realized I was creating a weird shadow, so I crisscrossed our softbox lights, and it seems to be evening out the lighting a little bit. We'll see when there's two of us here. All right, but we'll get started for this week. All right. There we go. Welcome to the weekly. I'm Jeremy, and it's just me this week. Sorry. So Chris was not able, last minute kind of workload at the job, so lunch is probably going to be in doubt, and we weren't able to meet up for the cast, but we will try again next week. And hang in there, Chris. I don't know what got dumped on you work-wise, but I hope it's not too evil and long-term. And I love the fact that I have a JPEG of Chris, if you're watching the live stream, and the corner of the Blood Bowl box is still in that image. All right, so this week on the weekly, One More Multiverse, Twilight Inscription, Mournblade RPG, and Warcro Adventures. So we've got a couple of Kickstarters and an odd entry into the VTT market. Definitely distinctive, but still kind of odd. So let's start out with One More Multiverse. So One More Multiverse is a newer entry to virtual tabletops. It's a tool set and a collection of assets, and I think they've already supported previous indie games, but now they're going for something pretty well known and well loved. They did a Blades in the Dark set of assets. So the Industrial Revolution era Europe, Doskvol is now completely recreated in One More Multiverse's virtual tabletop in their assets. So the entirety of Doskvol is inside this tool set. So what does that mean? So One More Multiverse has chosen a pixel art style, and I think they chose this darker setting and this darker game to show how pixel art doesn't limit you to specific kinds of games and specific tones of games. So every location, every item, every non-player character in John Harper's core book is in this tool set. So Tiffany Lee, who is the Chief Operating Officer and producer, says that means 125 locations, 150 NPCs, 3,000 assets, weapons, furniture, monsters, etc., all for $29.99. So a very reasonable price for all of that work. That's a ton of pixel art work, and it's animated as well. So there's a promotional video that kind of shows you what to expect and does a little bit of a kind of dramatic voiceover and shows some scenes and things. And yeah, it looks like an indie pixel art game. It's really, really well produced. The production quality is very, very high. So Lee also says, rather than having to make an entire continent, Doskvol is so well defined that the vast majority of the districts, landmarks from the book, for instance, we've made direct pixel art translations so the GM can immediately hop in and it's ready to go. So yeah, a very comprehensive tool set. She also went on to say, teaching RPGs is, I think, uniquely time immersive in an upfront way. If you're thinking of taking on a new game, it's quite difficult for an entire group to learn through play the way you might with a video game. So someone, almost always the GM, has to invest a lot of time and effort up front and then explains this to the players. We think that kind of help explains why the market is so dominated by single systems. That's a really good point. That's 5e's dominance. But there's just much more friction with trying something new than there would be with a traditional video game. So the huge focus for us is reducing that. So they're tending towards it having a more collaborative, video game experience to lower the barrier of entry to new systems and new settings. So the toolset includes a walkthrough for building a character, digital character sheet that's fully integrated, and it's all done in a charming pixel art style that is the product of the partnership with Possum Creek. And they also are doing the upcoming release of Yabiza's Bed and Breakfast. So so this more grimdark game, they thought it would be a good opportunity to show off what their platform was able to do. One more quote from Lee. Even though Multiverse has a kind of top-down pixel art aesthetic, that doesn't mean we're Stardew Valley. We're not just cute. We can really achieve, I think, a significantly different vibe with Blades in the Dark. So yeah, I think that's very interesting. So watch that. I'll put a link to that promotion video. It's pretty striking. And pre-orders for this Blades tool set are scheduled to begin October 3rd. Oh, the full release. They're available now to pre-order, and the full release is scheduled for October 13th. So it's a very impressive undertaking. I'm not sure, if they're going to actually make the money for all that work back, because it's quite a bit of work to create those assets, but it's also a very different experience. And so maybe younger players and players that have been, just weaned on 5e, grown up doing cutting their teeth, whatever you would say, on 5e, this might be a way to kind of get them over, because if they played Stardew Valley or other, retro-inspired computer RPGs, this might be a nice translation into actually, playing your own characters and your own stories. But that's the other thing that I hesitate. Like someone like myself, I'm impressed by the production, but I don't think I would ever play it because it feels so much more like a video game. Like you're pushing it well into the realm of you're watching people play a video game together and like having some input. I'm curious how that would actually feel. But as I see a lot of the really highly produced, Roll20 modules and stuff where you're, moving tokens and there's like, you're revealing things within an area of sight or from the light of a torch or whatever, that, feels like you're playing on a PC, like you're playing a game on a PC that's not, you're not completely under control of. And the thing I did notice, the more you use assets like maps, really lushly illustrated maps with grids on them, you do get a lot of people like studying the art and saying, "Is this a door? Can I go in here? Wait, what's this? Can I pick this up? Is this something I can throw?" So it takes away from the kind of theater of the mind and the storytelling, because people are trying to game the system or kind of cheat with the artwork a little bit. So tile sets and things can lead a little bit to that, and you're going to have a little bit breaking of immersion while the game master is saying, "No, that's a wall. No, that's not removable. You can't interact with that." Saying things that say that are more video gamey, because if you're in this pixel art world, I think you'll tend to use video game vocabulary accidentally. So yeah, I'm curious. So let us know in the chat, Chris, what you think about that, or if you've seen that. So one more multiverse. So it's well worth picking up, especially if you're a fan of pixel art style. It's a cute pixel art style, but from that video, you can tell that they're really trying to let you play any kind of game with any kind of tone that you want. It just happens to be represented by pixel art characters. So another variation on a theme that I noticed is a new game from Fantasy Flight, who I guess is now owned by Asmodee, who is now owned by the Embracer Group. Oof. It's all being swallowing itself. So Twilight Inscription, a very nicely illustrated, just like its related game, Twilight Imperium, really nicely produced, and it's Fantasy Flight, so of course it's going to be well produced. So immersive gameplay in the grandiose world of Twilight Imperium. So if you don't know, Twilight Imperium is a very epic. Players take the roles of these different civilizations or different races, and they're all it's kind of like a 4X kind of game. You're exploring, or there's trade, and then there's some kind of like government type system, and then there's warfare. And so Twilight Imperium famously takes an insane amount of time to set up, an insane amount of time to play. So I don't know. Have you ever finished a game, Chris? I'm waiting for the text-to-speech response. I think Chris has been involved in a game or two, and I don't know if anyone has ever finished the game, because once you get started and the sun starts going down, it's like, is this going to be an overnight experience? A little bit hard to set up. Maybe like, university, at a university kind of situation where you're all in the same house living, it might be a little bit easier. But anyhow, this larger-than-life platform is the setting for Twilight Inscription, a roll-and-write game where you take control of one of these compelling factions in this in their cooperation or warfare against each other. And so it tries to recreate the same depth of gameplay of the original game, just without all the plastic. So that's what it really feels like to me, is you just have the cardboard, the cardboard and the dice, and you take everything else away, and that's what you got. So the players mark their progress on player boards. So using dry erase markers, you control 4 different kind of dashboards within. So individual kind of tracking. Tracking dashboards for what you're doing and what the results were. And of course, you're trying to get the most victory points in whichever route you take, so trade or diplomacy or warfare. And so it's they do include a learn as you play kind of simplified rules, but it's one of those, the review that I read said that it's one of those that's a little too simplified, so they take out some pretty crucial mechanics. So you're left asking, wait, well, but how does that work? I guess we're just going to ignore that in this first kind of trial playthrough. So it's lacking some of the details, which are going to make you go to the main rulebook anyhow. So why not just try to play your first game directly out of that? So the sheets or the dashboards that you're controlling are split into navigation, expansion, industry, and warfare. So very much like Twilight Imperium, which is on their third or fourth edition. They keep cranking out those coffin boxes. So you explore the galaxy, claim assets. There are relic cards, focus dice, specialty assets to unlock planets. And some of the factions introduce new mechanics, which I'm not sure may exist in expansions in the Twilight Imperium game. For example, the Vuil'Raith Cabal introduces captives, which may be spent as resources. The Necrovirus gives you the ability to cast additional votes in a turn. The Winu give you the ability to cross out commodities in industry and claim when you claim new counselors. So a lot of additional mechanics and strategies, and maybe because there's less movement on the board and things, they can introduce mechanics that have already been fleshed out in expansions for this world. So strategy, production, warfare, and event cards are the kind of stages of each turn. And so, they say it's roll and write. So that's exactly what happens. You're rolling dice to determine the success or results of your actions, and then recording those things on your dashboard, and competing or cooperating with other players. So of course, for this style of game, this makes the replayability incredible, because just play a different faction each time, or every time you're doing it, you're going to have different amounts of success or results. So I'm not sure. I guess maybe they've realized, because I've seen Twilight Imperium get kind of cheap in some online retailers. So I think there is an annual game that goes on through the JIG, the game group in Japan here. Someone hosts an annual game of it to try to get through it, but maybe that they're attempting to remedy that the kind of barrier to entry, the difficulty of execution of that actual board game, and that it is starting to get, I guess, I don't know. I mean, I guess I would call it the one of the original and most infamous kind of Ameritrash board games, because it's so much plastic and so colorful, and the theme is really strong. It's not running an art gallery or growing grapes or whatever the artsy or more hipster board games end up doing. It's just space opera, sci-fi, 4X kind of style. So we know it's going to look good because it's Fantasy Flight, and they already have the systems and mechanics, just adapting those to a roll and write. Who knows? But I don't see a release date. So designed by James Kniffen, and so I'm not sure if that's the same designer. I did not look that up beforehand. So I'm not sure if a different designer took the game and streamlined it, or if this is the original designer. But an oddity, definitely something where they're trying. It must come in a much smaller box. That would be the big advantage of it. It's going to be all cardboard, so it'll be heavy, but it'll be much tinier. So Twilight Inscription, and I can't remember too in this review if I saw solo rules. It seems like something you could solo with like an AI, some sort of AI deck or something that would be soloable. I didn't see the number of players that it ranged from, but interesting. That's an odd thing, and I don't know if that's something that was inspired by the Asmodee purchase or the Embracer Embrace, or why Fantasy Flight is thinking this. But they're obviously trying to find a solution to someone that doesn't want to take over their dining room table with a massive sprawling space opera. All right, and this is something that Matt let me know about. We had talked about this Kickstarter before. So there was a board game called Elric, Rise of the Young Kingdoms, which is an officially licensed Elric of Melniboné themed board game by Le Departement, which are previous, I believe, Command or Fantasy Flight, maybe Command designers, but produced in France. And something that was added as a separate pledge level, and I think they were in the last 24 hours. So as of this recording, I think this Kickstarter is in the last 24 hours. But something was added as a pledge level and added onto one of their larger pledges for the board game was a PDF of the official Mournblade, the official tabletop role play for Moorcock's grim fantasy setting. So this game had only been available previously in French. So it's been supported a lot in French, and Mournblade, I guess, would be is named after maybe Stormbringer, the Elric's infamous sword, but it's a starter set PDF that gives you lets you start playing Mournblade with the CYD system, so designed for exciting gaming. experience. So maybe a little bit more, well, fitting the stories and the setting. So it allows you to roleplay as a chosen, a champion of either law or chaos. And you have been chosen by the lords of the higher worlds to serve their designs. So what does this starter set include? And of course, this is all digital. This is a digital PDF level for this. A 56-page rulebook containing the core rules, a bit of sorcery, and equipment needed to fight in the Young Kingdoms. And I think they may be tying this, because that seems to work. It's worked a couple of times on me, where there's a board game, but there's with a lot of miniatures, a lot of plastic, and then there's a tabletop role play that you could use the miniatures for. So it kind of, when you feel like, oh, maybe there's two ways I'm actually going to use this thing, it tends to sell it a little bit better. So that may be their motivation for doing this. So maybe the setting for the starter set is the Young Kingdoms, the same setting as the board game. A 30-page quest book, Dangerous Games. The quest is an introduction to the world of Mournblade. 6 pre-generated characters, including the sorcerer from Pantang, a brave captain of the Purple Towns, and a sellsword from Lormier. And an HD original map of the Young Kingdoms. So yeah, it sounds like you're playing in the setting of the game. So you're not playing Elric, you're playing kind of the kingdoms and houses surrounding and kind of responsible for the overthrow of the capital city. So they do plan to bring Mournblade to retail in English. So they'll release the whole collection, but when, we don't know. I guess it depends on the success and the difficulty of the fulfillment of the board game. But we should see, they say soon, they're quoted as saying soon, you should be able to buy it. And you can pledge right now for 10 euros. There's a specific level only for this PDF, set of PDFs. Through the Kickstarter and with a November release date. So you'll get that PDF in November. And you can also pick up the board game. It's included in the higher tier level of the board game if you want all the plastic. And I remember, too, we talked about maybe a couple of years ago now that the Elric saga is still being optioned for TV. We haven't heard any development on that, but yeah, who knows if that's making any progress. There's a couple of things that are probably stuck in pre-production hell that sound amazing, but we've seen Rings of Power, so maybe we should be grateful that stuff gets stuck in production hell. So check that out on the Kickstarter. I'll put the, and there may be a late pledge as well after it closes. So you got one more day on that. I'll put the link to that, and you can take a look at Mournblade. So yeah, for 10 euros, it's probably worth being able to check that out and see that system, and at least an introduction to it. The artwork is great for the board game. It's really beautiful. So if they use the same artists and illustrations for the board game in the RPG, and if it's already in French, I guess they already have artwork for the RPG. So we'll see. And I'm looking forward to a more full English release of this. I didn't know about this game. I didn't know there was an officially licensed French version of an Elric RPG. So thanks again, Matt, for sending me that article, and yeah, we'll keep an eye out for that. Yeah, the board game looks interesting. It looks kind of fun. There's a lot of plastic. It's got like 50 or so miniatures, and then the Kickstarter, of course, gives you a bunch of exclusive things that they're only producing for the Kickstarter version. So I think I'm more interested in the tabletop game, so I may take a look at that, or may support that, or may just kind of wait for it to be physically produced. We'll have to see what happens. And the last thing I wanted to talk about is another thing coming to Kickstarter. I don't believe it's there yet. Yeah, I think later this month. Warcro Adventures. So what this is Corvus Belli's first step into introducing their fantasy setting. So if you know Corvus Belli, they're the Spanish company that produces Infinity, a really, really fun sci-fi skirmish game that is kind of anime influenced in its stylization, and it's, they take these feature factions of the world as well as kind of an incursion of aliens, and humanity's kind of spread out, but the factions are still based on kind of geography of the U.S. as Pan-Oceania, and something that's very American military with werewolves and or lichens, I think, half man, half wolves. So yeah, and anyhow, so this is their first showing off of what they want to do with a fantasy setting. So first, they're going to release this kind of tile crawling Warcro Adventures, which is going to introduce a party of characters from representing some of the fantasy races, and then probably more accurately depict the monsters. So the monsters for this game are going to probably be representing a faction similar to the aliens, alien faction in Infinity itself. So they wanted to kind of set the tone of this world by letting you play these named characters, and the named characters may carry over to the skirmish game. But ultimately, that's what they're going to do, is be releasing this setting for a fantasy-based skirmish game. So probably a small, like 6 to 10, 8 to 12 kind of miniatures skirmish game. I'm interested though, because the thing that's fun about Infinity is there's so much high tech and hacking and things, and it's very line of sight. Like it's a game that requires like laser pointers to make sure to gauge line of sight, and that feels very thematic. That works really well. And I'm not sure laser pointers would be very fun, coming from elves in the woods. But one of the things that they're doing very differently in this board game, in Warcro Adventures, that they wanted to kind of create a more dynamic, something more similar to Diablo, and something that would separate it from a game like Gloomhaven or Descent, is taking the initiative track and making it a circle. And every player has a kind of the initiative rotates around the circle every round, and players can change positions and gives more dynamic. So every round, your location in this initiative track can change. A quote from Alberto Abel, the game designer at Corvus Belli, said, "We developed an initiative system for Aristea, one of the games that we published 5 years ago. We knew that it would be more interesting if the initiative wasn't the same every round, and we wanted something like that in Warcrow. So we started to work with a simple track that had numbers from 1 to 20. Then we went through the track. When you went through the track, you could start again from position 1. Then we started to think about, this is like a circle, so they wanted to implement it as a circle. So playing with that mechanic, they developed a mechanic to push and pull the characters around the circle. And it was one of the key mechanics that they thought really separated this out. So they said players can now be very in touch with the action panel of the game, where they spend energy and activate their characters. So the timing and kind of execution of certain things and how that affects you in the initiative track is very important and more dynamic than previously. And so they're trying to set this game apart by having something unique like that. The other thing that they're doing for this game, which is not unique, but it seems like it makes a lot of sense for how they're executing this, is they're going to use an app to represent the narrative. So instead of having a spiral bound book of numbered narrative chunks that you would read as you're moving through different parts of different scenarios or different parts of the campaigns, they're going to put that in an app so that the text will be available digitally. Maybe there'll be some music. But one thing that will help them do is make it very easy to edit and update, and also make it easier to translate. You don't have to finish translated versions and get them all, to print for the release of the game. You can have different languages available on the app. So the solution to that spiral-bound book, because they said Warcrow will contain some 200,000 words once it's finished, and the ability for them to localize it, have a Spanish and an English version probably right off the bat, makes it much easier. And so the effect is your choices will change the scenario as you play. So that's the idea of having a book that you can read the little narrative bits from. Another quote is, "It's a fantasy game in a new world, but we have tried to understand many things in our history. We take many ideas, for example, how armor works, how armor is built for different troops in our history, in order to design, for example, the weapons or armor of our miniatures." So the other thing that they emphasized, apart from an interesting initiative track and using an app for all the narrative parts, is the setting itself. Is they want to move away from the familiar Tolkien-esque kind of Eurocentric. Well, I guess it'll still be kind of Eurocentric, Euro-inspired, but move away from the Tolkien-esque fantasy to have it be something that feels a little fresher and more unique. So they're taking inspiration from the American Wild West, and also the Age of Exploration, and of course, being produced in Spain, Spanish explorers being a big inspiration for it. So the game is set in this in-game empire in a place called Hawthorne Point, which everyone is kind of engaging it. They're forming their party, and it's covered with a mist that that will reveal an ancient elven empire to plunder. So yeah, that's I'm not sure trading European inspired myths for the imperialism of the Age of Exploration is, I don't know. We'll see how people react to that theme change. I can see what they're doing because it does fit a party seeking treasure and fame and gold. Is very much like, explorers getting commissions of ships to to conquer unexplored areas. So we'll see. The theme is, all nations will now send people, adventurers and mercenaries. These kind of people will take magical items and information from the past. So I guess you're going back into maybe fallen cultures, fallen kingdoms, fallen societies, and harvesting their ancient artifacts. So the game itself, the Warcro Adventures board game itself, is expected to be delivered in 2023. The crowdfunding will launch October 18th. And we'll get a better look at that. They've been doing a lot of previews. So if you take a look at the Corvus Belly YouTube channel, they've been doing a lot of previews both in Spanish and English of the named characters in the game. The undead look amazing. So they're kind of dark elf faction, and the undead, which I think they also have, undead, are really, really interesting. The designers that they work with are incredible. It's a very novel approach to these, to a idea of a zombie or an idea of a dark elf mage. They look very unique and very interesting. Not unfortunately, the hero characters, not so much. I wasn't wowed by the kind of elf, dwarf, and wizard kind of main characters. They seem, it's really hard to get away from that World of Warcraft inspired kind of chunky look of things. Not particularly chunky. They're not heroic scale. They're still more of that more human Corvus Belli kind of infinity scale, where the wrists and hands are very thin and small. And I'm not sure, they didn't mention, they probably will in the Kickstarter, if they're going to continue to work in metal. So if these are all going to be white metal miniatures, which hold really nice detail, and they're nice, chunky, significant stuff, but they're a bit tricky to assemble, like, the tiny little antennas and putting, little tips of spears and things on might be a little bit daunting. I know that with their larger, especially their mechs and things in Infinity, they're now working in COcast. So we'll see what they're going to go with. And because they are calling this a board game, maybe they are going to play with the material. Maybe they'll do more board game type miniatures, but they're not doing that for any of their other games. I think Defiance and their other game, Aerostate, it's not really a board game, it's a boxed game. Those are all still metal miniatures. So I think they'll probably be, and that keeps the their area of expertise and their execution and their costs maybe down. Although I've heard metal, the white metal that they use, is getting expensive. So we will see, what happens. So I think the maybe the anime influence with this fantasy theme is the thing that's making me see it a little bit as like Warcraft looking, but. Let's see. I already gave you the quote about the new world. I'm really curious. I'm interested in the lore. The lore is kind of not really. There's not a lot of novels and things that are spelling out what's going on in Infinity. There's a lot of kind of dry history in a lot of their books, and of course there is a 2D20 Modiphius game set in the Infinity world, so there's a lot of lore in those books, but it's pretty dry. They don't have a lot of fiction and things supporting the lore. It's very interesting, the background of the characters and how the mechanics of the different factions for the war game, the skirmish game, come from the factions, like dedication to science, or dedication to destroying all life, or whatever. So some factions end up being more high tech. Some are just heavy weapon bruisers. So there's a lot of interesting, unique differences in Infinity. So I'm interested to see what they will do in a fantasy setting, if that will work the same way. So we will find out. I guess we'll get a hint of that in October. So how those characters play may give us some hints of what mechanics we'll see in Warcrow further. And for anybody that hasn't guessed, Warcrow is actually the translation of Corvus Belli. So that's I'm not sure if that's Latin or Spanish, or it sounds a little Italian, but that's the translation of the company name, is why they went with Warcrow for the name of their fantasy setting. So yeah, yet another game. They've been doing a lot. Corvus Belli has been producing a lot of different styles of games. There's a couple of different modes to play in Infinity. They've got a new kind of kill a big bad monster, kind of Monster Hunter style of Infinity coming out, and they're still supporting Defiance, was their Infinity-based tile-crawling board game. And if you want to see amazing playthroughs of that, Zombie Sashimi on YouTube, Nick, who I've done a few painting live streams with, Nick has painted the full, or is in the process of painting the full collection of miniatures for Defiance, and going through battle reports or playthroughs of that game, showing you the mechanics, the dice rolls. It's beautifully animated with all these sound effects, and it's amazing. So if you want to see how that game plays, and maybe get a little bit of a hint of how the system will feel, or how it will look, except in a fantasy setting for Warcrow, take a look at that. So yeah, Zombie Sashimi, I'll put a link in the channel for that. But yeah, Nick has a really well-produced playthrough of that game if you're curious about Defiance. And I'm sure there'll be Infinity and much more support. Oh, no, and also some stories. Nick did some original short stories, wrote some stories because of kind of the lack of fiction and lore. Took some of his favorite characters and wrote little short fiction pieces, and then read them on the channel as well. So take a look at Zombie Sashimi. So that was a good connection there. so my missing co-host can be found online at mostly on Twitter, but also some Instagram. Hive Mind with Y's and not I's, so you can catch up with Chris and say, quit that job and do this full time. So we don't have any more interruptions on our weekly meetings. If you like what we're doing here, please visit upturntable.com to see everything that's going on. And if you want to support us directly, either click the join button below this video to become, if you're watching it, to become a YouTube member, or patreon.com/upturntable and become a weekling. That will let us know that you're supporting directly our weekly topical current event podcast, and let you give us input on what to do in the future, and maybe directions for the show itself. And Upturn Table on all social media. And you can find me doing Abuse Cartoons. That's Monday nights North American time. I draw that. And so Abuse Cartoons both on Twitch and YouTube. So just like this live stream, both on Twitch and YouTube. So that is going to do it for this week. Take a look at the channel and see what I did with the first session of the actual play. It's the first shift, I believe, of the game. So the first little 6-hour chunk of time for the Blade Runner RPG. So the Free League Blade Runner RPG, that first case file that they give us in advance, that's in the starter set for the Kickstarter for the Blade Runner RPG. So we did, Matt, Will, and myself did that, and it's really fun. They have really interesting characters. We didn't use pre-gens. We kind of rolled our own characters, but they kind of fill the role of veteran and rookie in a very interesting, different way. So Matt is a fixer and Will is an enforcer, but it works well. So a human and replicant, and all of the mischief that creates in that setting, and the moral dilemmas. So that's it for this week. So thank you so much for joining me, and we'll hope that Chris isn't attacked by Tokyo higher-ups and confined to the desk next week, and we'll do this again. So take care, and thanks for joining us. Goodbye. All right, let me get my 30 seconds out. I'm sure Chris typed later mortals in the chat. All right, give me 30 seconds. All right. So let's take a look at the chat. That was last week. Nice. Yes. Oh, thank you, Alvaro. Yes. Corvus Belli is Latin. Yes. So, yeah. So Warcrow. Yeah, it did sound much more Latin than anything but my experience with, if there's such a thing as like, like Old English, like older Spanish. I can imagine for a company name, they might dig a little deeper. All right. So yeah, we need a dancing Chris, or at least a VTube avatar. That would be great. All right. Yeah. So we're talking a little bit about that Dune Agents. What is it? What's the name? Yeah, Agents of Dune. The what if scenario. Oh yeah, because it's just me. Well, until the chat covers her up. Oh, she's not in here. Oh, the little dancing girl didn't make it in here, but I can add a source, can't I? Okay, there we go. So how is everyone doing? Let's see if I can find. There we go. All right. So until I can just put her down here until chat covers her up. So there's your dancing girl for this week. All right. Let's take a look in the chat. So stuck checking on next month's schedule. Oh, beautiful. So yeah, they got you scheduling. Oh, that's right. And there's been this huge invasion of new employees. So I'm sure that's even worse to. Yes, Crispin noticed that Chris had a stroke and is now frozen lifelessly in our main segment. Nice. And most of the topics that I get, those are the reactions. So Matt said, does it have tools to create new assets of pixel art in these packages? I wonder. Oh yeah, they specified in the description that I read. They said, use our bank of assets or import your own. So I don't know. I mean, I guess you could, imitate or there's a lot of pixel art resources for game designs and stuff. Like Unity, I think, has a ton of pixel art libraries and things. So you could probably bring that sort of thing in. Yeah, so they let you import your own, or they let you, you immediately have this thing to kind of drag and drop this huge library of everything that's kind of referenced in the Blades in the Dark core book. So yeah, I wonder what you can, and how much you can build, like if they give you generic, like here's a bed, here's a table, and, like kind of lay out rooms that way. I think from having the thousands of assets they mentioned, they probably have that, do that. So after learning the news that Hasbro has bought out the competition and only D&D exists, yes, this is the darkest timeline. Yes, that's brutal. Yeah, right. Once everything becomes virtual, that makes them much easier targets to be all bought out. Abyss said, Chris had a stroke. That's right. And is in eternal darkness. That's true. I'm keeping Chris frozen and just with the ability to turn on and off. In eternal darkness, where every hell is every commercial is just a critical. It's just Critical Role selling you products. That is quite an evil. And every country replaces their national anthem with one of those rock songs from Critical Role. Oh man. Yeah, also the longest game ever. Yes, an unending Critical Role campaign. Yes, yeah, Twilight Imperium, the OG. I think that's one of the first games where that kind of coined the phrase, Ameritrash. Like this is like flashy, and it doesn't do as much as the Euro games, and the level of sophistication of the mechanics isn't quite as high, but it sure is pretty, and there sure is a lot of it. So American, very trashy American style. Oh yeah, they did do, what is that? Yeah, what is that game called? They took the mechanics and kind of they reskinned basically the original Dune board game, the Avalon Hill, or the original version of that Dune board game, and replaced it with Twilight Imperium, and I forget what they called it. Yeah, because they couldn't get the rights or lost the rights. Fantasy Flight to be able to produce that. I forget what that game was called. But yes, yeah, there is a Twilight Imperium Dune-style board game where you're fighting over, the resources of a single planet, I believe. Yeah, what is that? Relic? Is that called Relic? Something like that. I'm getting confused because I think there's a 40K game called Relic, something like that. But yeah, I think it is basically a reskinned Dune board game. Nice. Thank you, Matt. Mournblade is Stormbringer's sister sword. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm not up on my Moorcock. I gotta do some more reading. I think I've only literally only read one one short story, like one, not even like I don't know if it's novels or short stories, but I've only made it through one, so I don't know much of the lore. So I've got a couple of nice collections, so I gotta get through that. Once I heard all the plagiarism, the Witcher is just gross plagiarism of Elric. I bought a couple of collections, and I think the third one is coming out this Christmas season, so they're trying to collect it in like nice hardback volumes. I think the thing that people complain about it though is what is it? These collections are in chronological order, not the order that they were written. So you get the maturity of Moorcock's writing like fluctuates like dramatically because they wanted to put the collections in chronological order. So you're reading the world as these events happen. But similar to Robert E. Howard, he jumps around with the character and the timeline. So early stories that aren't as well written are going to be interspersed. So there's a little bit of a whiplash. You're like, wait, whoa, this story was just not as good. But yeah, those are the collections. Oh, cool. Yeah, Abyss. Yeah, if you wanted to take a look, I'm really curious about that. And that could be something. So Abyss, if you do end up pledging that PDF, we should run that together on Discord. That we should do a session of that on Discord, especially if it's a starter set with pre-gens. That would be really fun and easy to do. Yes, any PDF appears magically. Yes, that's true. There's magic PDFs floating around. And the sad thing is, like, I think that's happening with games and that's definitely happening with streaming series, like the Tortuga. I think most people refer to it as Tortuga is the only place where you can get some of these canceled streaming series that never made it to physical media, that the rights were just lost or they just deleted them. So I forget what's it called. Something Space. Warner just canceled this series, and it's still licensed on Netflix. It's not Inner Space, something Space. And once the license runs out on Netflix, it will be available nowhere, and it never made it to physical media. So that's crazy. Yes. All of those games just appeared. Nice. Oh, yeah. Thanks, Matt. Yeah. I will get that next episode. The audio worked better than I thought. I was worried that it would be harder to listen to, and with music beds and stuff too, it smooths out some of the the change in quality, so that works. Oh, thanks, Abyss. Yeah, you guys killed with the Blade Runner episode. Thematic feel was something special. Oh, good. Yeah, I really looked out that site that I use for assets for music and video and stuff had a ton of like cyberpunk type stuff, so I could, without running into copyright issues by using Vangelis music or whatever, I was able to get the tone similar. Nice. Yeah, the having two players, I think especially for that first case file, the tension between the two players, because I'm thinking if there were 3 or 4 players, we would have lost a little bit of the intensity of that conflict and relationship between a human and a replicant Blade Runner. That's very cool. Rex Alvaro saves the day. Yes, yeah. Rex is that reskin of. I think it's out of print, but was the Fantasy Flight reskin of Dune using Twilight Imperium as the setting. Yeah, the true Ameritrash OGs are the Milton Bradley Game Master series. Yes, Matt called it. Yes, Axis and Allies, Shogun, Fortress America. Yes, yes. And what was that? Broadsides and Boarding Parties. Was that was? I don't think that was part of that series, but that was a big trashy Milton Bradley one too. Rexus Latin, of course, too. Yes. Thanks, Alvaro. Yeah, obviously, yeah. Latin dropped out of the American education. I think it's stayed around in Europe. There's a lot more Latin fluency, but yeah, Americans haven't studied Latin for a while, so I'm pretty dumb when it comes to that. Oh, that's very cool. Yeah, I wonder. Yeah, all of those out of print Fantasy Flight games are crazy expensive now too, because they're just not going to exist again. You know, the rights have gone away or whatever. But I think so. Twilight Imperium is a Fantasy Flight original property, isn't it? So, because I think they've tried to do novels and things. I can't remember. I've seen some odd kind of supporting media for that setting, and I think that is a Twilight Imperium thing. Just like Android, the Android setting of Android Netrunner is Fantasy Flight's original setting. That's why they could release a book for their RPG. Nice. So Abyss said, yeah, all of the above games are indeed old. Yes, yeah, one forgets just how bad board games used to be and how horrible how incredible they have become. No, that's very true. The production quality, like once everything started getting that like thick cardstock with that linen treatment on all of the graphics and everything, and they just it is really incredible. And board game miniatures, just like the the level of quality of because what was considered board game miniatures was just the cheapest trashy kind of green army man kind of quality of casting with heavy flashing lines and not assembled like they were tried to be cast as much one piece as possible. But yeah, now there's really sophisticated assemblies and all of the nice things like the player color kind of rings that you can clip to the bases, so visually you can see like you have a player color and you can see where your piece is on a map, even if it's painted or unpainted. Yeah, the things have gotten really, really crazy sophisticated, and now they're building in all this app functionality, which I think is going to be one of those things that bites people in the ass, because eventually these games are going to become unplayable because the app and the license and everything is just going to fall apart. So there will be no app. I guess you can kind of, if you can get an APK file, and that would just be for Android. But if you get an APK file and put it on a thumb drive and stick it in the box, maybe you can have a device that you can then, retro, side load some old app. I don't know. But if they have if they need any sort of server connection, if they need to make an online connection to authenticate, then yeah, it's not going to work. Nice. Oh, Matt said, I played Shogun. Drunk. I love that game so much. Drunk in Shogun. I think most Shoguns were drunk anyhow. Nice. Yeah, I think there's a copy of that floating around in our little game group. Drunken Shogun. That'll have to be a live stream. All right. Wow. But yeah. I'm sorry, Matt. I said, I'm sorry, Matt. I cannot hear you over my premium Kickstarter board games. Yes, Matt and his old drunken Shogun games, probably with the top of the boxes collapse and it's got a little bit of tape holding that one corner together, like all good board games, because you just overstacked them on shelves and they got all crushed. Yeah, that was my favorite thing, is the stack of board games, and they all kind of had that nice concave top, because they got piled on or sat on or something. Because when you took that box lid off, unless you were one of those clever kids that put the box lid inside the lower one, it got broken and stomped on and all that good stuff. Oh man. Yeah, but that is amazing, and we're going to look back at this, especially because now that it's being choked by supply chain and Chinese manufacturing issues. We're going to look back at that era, that 2000 teens, like early 2000s and 2010s of what they were doing Kickstarter, and what Command was able to do with the giving you hundreds and hundreds of miniatures that were decent quality. They're not war game level quality, like off the sprue quality, but amazing amount of miniatures and varieties of sculpts. Like instead of just giving you 20 of the exact same pose of the exact same swordsman, a 2 or 3 alternate sculpts to make things look interesting and varied. It's really incredible. Metal tokens, wooden tokens, acrylic tokens, board game, components are just crazy. Wow. Yeah, right. Yeah, for 15 minutes. They looked like somebody cast them and then they held a lighter underneath them and just let them melt down a little bit. Yeah, board game miniatures are definitely brutal. Gloomhaven, yes. Oh, nice. Oh, nice. Wow. You'll have to take a look at Shogun. I never played it. I never had my old board games. I had a copy of Dungeon, the David McGrary game, probably a later edition of it. I think it had revised art from the 80s, and Dark Tower. I had a lot of fantasy board game stuff, but not a big variety of stuff. Because it was just me and my little brother for board games for a good part of my life. So it was a lot of Gnip Gnop and Connect 4. A lot of stupid stuff that had no theme to it. I don't know. Does Gnip Gnop have a theme? Nice. Yeah. So it is really amazing. We're gonna lose this someday. Like it's gonna go away, and especially because there already is that pull. There's Tabletopia, Tabletop Simulator, and a couple of other platforms now that Kickstarters are letting you try the digital version of their board games. But if you can't find players, why spend a couple $100s on this deluxe version of a board game and not just use the digital assets online if the idea is to just play the game? Matt is lost in nostalgia. Nice. Uh-oh. Matt posted a Board Game Geek link. Oh, yeah. Okay, the Game Master series. Yeah, Broadsides and Boarding Parties is one of that. Yeah, I had that. That was the only one. That had amazing, big ships. And, that was pretty crazy. So I did have Broadsides and Boarding Parties once upon a time. So I did have one of those. Fortress America. Yeah, that would be fun. I don't know mechanically if it's still that fun to play, but yeah, I like that. I like the idea of that game. Nice. So is Ikusa, was that formerly Shogun, or is that an updated? Oh, yeah. Yeah, I really like what Command did. Rising Sun is a really fun. People were, like they always do. People get upset about Fantasy Asia, but it's really well done. The mechanics of that game, because it's Eric M. Lang mechanics, and the design of the game are very, very cool. Very similar. It's a kind of a part of that series, the same one that Blood Rage, and then the Egyptian one is in. So it's it's area control with monsters. Your troops can summon monsters of the various mythologies and stuff. Yeah, so I do know Broadsides and Boarding Parties. Lots of big boats. Nice. All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for this week. So thank you to the tiniest anime girl for helping me in the chat. And Chris, hang in there. And hopefully we'll be together next week. And yeah. Oh, and so, that's right. There is a pumpkin spice latte cooling over on the other side of the table for Chris. So theming it with the Dune board game, or the Dune RPG. So we'll see what I'm going to do with that. Lots of caffeine. All right. So thanks, everybody, for joining me. And, of course, this is the exclusive audio that goes on the RSS feed for patrons. So I'll tweak this a little bit so it's easier to listen to, and you can have this on the RSS feed if you become a patron. So if you're listening to this and are a patron, thank you so much for your support. And if you're listening to the live stream, consider going to patreon.com/upturntable and helping us out. So we will do this again next week, and hopefully I will not be doing this alone and only talking to chat. So yeah, good night, everybody, and or good afternoon, as the case may be, and take care, and we'll do this all again next week. See you then. Goodbye.
忘